Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Drama Study Podcast. If you're new here, I cover drama reviews every Wednesday on this podcast. In this episode, I am going to be covering the Korean drama that's currently airing as of the time of this recording, titled Buried Hearts. It is currently airing on Wave and Hulu, and there are to be 16 episodes, 8 of which have aired. To give a quick synopsis about this drama, basically it follows So Dong-ju, who is the chairman secretary of a conglomerate called the San Group. As somebody who really comes from nothing, he has really gained a foothold into this company by getting close to the chairman and becoming the chairman's kind of like go-to man, assistant, and confidant, right? So you can imagine for a conglomerate like that, there are a lot of people interested in it for their own various reasons. And so this kind of gets him tangled up with everyone involved in this world, right? So from the chairman's family to other figures that are like interested in this company, and just in general, anyone that has a stake in this world. It's not immediately clear to me when I started watching this drama what his goal is, but if I could guess, I would say that So Dong-ju aims to one day be president of this company, right? And so that's kind of what he's working towards. But you can imagine there are gonna be a lot of obstacles along his way. So yeah, that is basically the synopsis of this drama. My initial impression of this and why I started watching this drama was, well, you can imagine Park Hyun-SIK is on the cover. Park Hyun-SIK is the main character, So Dong-ju, and I guess I just like dramas about like pull yourself up by the bootstraps, kind of like started from nothing, now we're here. Like dramas where the characters like struggle to get what they want, and it's kind of you following that journey. This drama has deviated in a way from that, but I will talk about that later. So yeah, Park Hyun-SIK is the main person that's drawn me to this. He's so easy to watch. He's very charismatic and just handsome, and it's honestly the best. He's just perfect. There are obviously a bunch of other like characters and leads, but I will make a mention of who you could consider the female lead, if quote and unquote, if you wanted to like call someone that, right? And that is played by Hong-Hwa-yeon. She plays Yeon-nam, who we find out is the granddaughter of the chairman. So she's our like female lead, I would say, right? And we have a bunch of other characters like Jang-sung, who is an influential character. He's the former director of the NIS, and kind of the real opposition our lead has in this drama. We also have other characters, but those are the ones that are like worth noting, right? So I'm just gonna get right into what I thought. And by the way, I've watched all 8 episodes that have aired, but first impressions about this drama from episode 1. I really liked episode 1, because it looks different. In terms of what the story is, the setup, and how things progressed, right? So in the very first episode, we see that So Dong-ju has already built that rapport with the chairman. We see that he has infiltrated this family, and because of his own intelligence and eidetic memory, he's able to become that confident to the point where the chairman is giving him codes to his safe. That's as close as you get to a person, right? And so we see that he's like someone that the chairman really relies on, right? So next time he seems kind of like a dog, right? It reminds me of the character of Sung Joong-gi in Reborn Rich in the very first episode, where like there's this character that's just like in there, and they're there to basically answer to the owner family. He also reminds me of the male lead in Queen of Tears, in that this is somebody that obviously comes from a lower class than the owner family, but because he's so trustworthy and he's just very smart, they rely on him for everything. So it's about the same idea here, in that So Dong-ju has built up a good reputation with the chairman, and so he trusts him very much. Everybody else in the family seems to have an issue with him in terms of like they kind of see that and see it as a possible threat to the succession that they have. And so, because the chairman himself does not have a son, which, I mean, spoiler, we find out later he does, but at the beginning we assume and it looks like he doesn't have a son, right? Basically it's the son-in-law that's basically next in line, or should be next in line, right? But Sodongju coming in as that third party that, the chairman really comes to rely on, makes it look like, it's possible things might not go to the son-in-law, right? It might go to someone like Sodongju, right? And also just Sodongju is just so difficult to control, I feel like, for them, that they don't really like him. So yeah, I love the idea of the story. I like that, it's about this character that is very brilliant, and we kind of see him how to navigate scenarios and situations, right, that he falls into, right? That's really refreshing about this story, right? The vibe of this old drama, I would say, is very like not dark, but getting there, right? Because it's about basically power struggle, you kind of see kind of the worst of a lot of people, right? And you see how the love for money kind of erodes relationship, right? And so that's very interesting to me. And I find it interesting because our main character Sodongju is different in that sense, in that like is the kind of person that, even though I guess the chairman offered or maybe not offered, but like there was a plot for him to somehow like seduce the chairman's granddaughter and marry her, because he fell in love with Yeonam, he abandons this idea, right? And I find that to be very, very interesting, right? His character is actually pure in a way that I think that that's also part of why the chairman likes him so much, right? They can tell that he is not money hungry. He is not a terrible human being, right? He still has those good natures, and I think that that's what also makes him shine through, right? And just to talk about the main leads, I find it very interesting. And actually, this is the point where the drama becomes really interesting to me, is when you find out that Yeonam is actually the chairman's granddaughter. Up to that point, it was not really clear the direction this drama was going, right? And so in the first episode, I wasn't so sure. But when I saw that scene where you find out that she is the chairman's granddaughter, like, it was a good shift in tone, right? And this is something that was spoiled for me on TikTok, right? TikTok is so good at spoiling all the shows, all the dramas for me. Like, I will see the like highlights of a series before I even start watching it, and that's what happened here, right? But generally, I felt like it was a very good plot twist. And I also like when other characters have a motive for why they do things that is like out of the reasoning of the male lead, in terms of that, like, it is not because of the male lead that they are doing what they do, right? And so I like the fact that like the female lead here has her own story that she's trying to like pursue. She has her own like intentions, right, that is separate from the male lead, right? And the male lead ends up being collateral damage in this case, right? The old wedding scene was just beautifully done. I feel like I caught a lot of things that Sodongju could not catch because he didn't know. So from the beginning, right, it was clear that the chairman invited him to the wedding because he knew that Sodongju was dating his granddaughter, right? Same with Yeomjang's son, right, who is like nephew, is the one that's gonna marry Yeonnam, right? It seemed like everybody knew up to this point already that they were dating, except them. They didn't know everybody else knew. So everybody knew but them, right, that they were dating. And so it was very interesting to me watching that whole wedding scene play out from the moment she comes out and she's walking down the aisle, and you see Sodongju's face change, but at the same time you see how like all the guards come out all at once, because they all, like, I guess it was instructed that he was going to act out, right? And they all had to like drag him away, right? So it was very interesting, that whole sequence. I liked it because it was clear that, there was more to this, and Sodongju was not, or is not, privy to everything, right? But it also kind of showed the chairman's goodwill towards Sodongju, in terms of like he wanted to check, like, as we later find out that Sodongju did not know Yeonnam was his granddaughter, right? Because if he did, that would have indicated some hidden motive to why he was dating his granddaughter. So I really like that he gave him that benefit of the doubt, and he really made him see that scene so that he could confirm that Sodongju did not know, and so he could fight for Sodongju to stay in the company because, obviously Yum Jang-sun wanted him gone, right? So I really like that scene. That was really well done. The whole drama just became way more interesting, right? It appears to me that the female lead is doing because, she's wondering about her dad and why her dad died in the way he did, and why the person that was in the car with her dad survived and also ended up marrying her mom. So it's a lot of trauma and a lot of pain that she's dealing with, and I get it. And I also get like not wanting to reject the stocks your granddad is giving you, right? And so that's why she marries Yum Jang-sun's nephew, right? Very understandable, and her character is relatable in a lot of ways. I really like her, and I like the actress as well. She's very good at emoting, right? You can tell that she loves Sodongju a lot, right? We later find out that like she loves him more than anything, and she's even willing to get a divorce for him, right? So yeah, I really like that, how the show has set up a lot of things, right? There is a lot of side stories in this, or not a lot, but a few side stories to this that I'm not sure how it's going to end up, and how it's going to be pulled into this, and how it's going to be all tied together and wrapped nicely at the end. Because to an extent, when I first started this, I just assumed, okay, this is a fight for a company, kind of the way Impossible Air was supposed to be, right? But to an extent, it has deviated to a bunch of other places and a bunch of other things that I'm not sure how this is gonna play out. So the first one that was, I'll say, a little deviated, or a place where it deviated, is the amnesia arc, where Sodongju loses memory, and because Sodongju's memory is eidetic, he cannot lose his memory because all the codes is in there, right? That plot was not necessary in my own view, or is not necessary in my own view, because I think it's still ongoing, or at least at this point he's pretending to have lost his memory, right? He's gotten it back. I'm not too sure what the purpose of that was, and I don't like how his sister was killed because of that. It seemed kind of like a weak point when I heard Yum Jang-sun's like kind of reasoning. It's like, okay, shock from this will bring back his memory. It did bring back the memory, but it was not the way I would have liked them to have written that portion of the story. But I don't think it's for a bigger reason that they wrote it like that they wrote Yum Jang-sun to be so mean and to be so like brutal to Sodongju, right? I think there's a bigger picture, and that leads me to my second point that I think is kind of deviating, is that it's coming up to seem like there is more to Sodongju's background, right? It's coming up to seem that he is somehow still tied to this world, right, as the character of Sunghyun, right? So when he loses his memory, he assumes the name Sunghyun because that's something that just felt natural to him, right? And from the housekeeper in the chairman's house reacted, you can tell there is more to that. So either Sunghyun is like her son or something, right? I have a speculation that it's very possible that Sodongju, because he's an orphan, right, is most likely her son. And if that is the case, I also think that it is more likely that Sodongju is also related to Yum Jang-sun, because Yum Jang-sun does not have a kid, right? And so it's very possible that there is some connection there, because I feel like there's a reason that this show is making Yum Jang-sun so brutal to Sodongju that it has to come out that they are related in some way, because that is going to make Yum Jang-sun regret a lot of the things he's done. That's my speculation, at least, right? That is what happened in a different Korean drama called Scandal. It's a really old drama, but that's what happened, right? It's when the father was basically beating his kid to a pulp and about to kill him that it comes out that that's actually his son, right? And so he regrets everything. So I feel like that's kind of where this is going as well, that like there is some link to all these people. We just don't know what the link is, because there's also a point where the chairman mentions that Sunghyun used to be brought into the house by Yeonnam's dad, right, before he passed, right? The chairman makes a mention of that to the housekeeper, and how like he looked like a girl then, right? Because I guess because it's just a pretty boy, right? So I sense that there is something there. I just don't know what, right? Like I can't guess it, but if I was gonna guess from how the like camera is panning, it's going to be something that ties him to Yeomjang's son. So we'll see what that is. But yeah, that is another thing that I would say is a deviation, in that like I did not expect that. It's giving makjang. Um, although yeah, started to give makjang the minute that like they were trying to kill Sodongju, but like still, it's giving more makjang. When the white truck came and killed his sister, like I was like, I mean, I know she's just like someone that raised him. I was by his side as a kid, but still, like that was like the height of like, okay, I'm entering the melodrama world, right? So yeah, I feel like it's kind of a little bit of a deviation, because I just assumed it'll be him basically in this like corporate world and trying to get ahead, but that might not be the case. So yeah, we'll see where that leads us. I still find it very entertaining regardless, because I mean, Park Hyun-SIK can do no wrong, and the story is pretty good still, right? It's still a good idea, and I kind of liked that about Scandal, which is the other Korean drama I was talking about. So I don't mind that that's where this is going, right? And if there's one thing I like, is that like our lead is very smart, and very resourceful, and he has like 9 lives, and so yeah, I am enjoying all the different plot twists as they come out. I do find it interesting that because he had amnesia, right, he started living in the house of the chairman, because again the chairman, I don't know, feels so much for Sodongju that it actually makes no sense, but he has such a huge reliance on Sodongju, and I think just values him as a person, has come to care for him as kind of another son, that like he's just like, okay, yeah, come and live with us, and they're all trying to like make sure he's okay, right? I mean, also because he has like literal billions in his head, right? But I find that very interesting, right? And yeah, I just want to talk one more thing that kind of has deviated, and it's not a huge deviation. It's just I don't know again how this is gonna play out. Is the plot line with the chairman's son that is from another woman, right? We see that that is something that Chadoki, right, the chairman's daughter, is worried about, and we don't know how that's gonna play out, right? Currently, it still seems that like they are targeting Sodongju because they can see him getting close to that son, and they see that as a sign that the chairman wants that son to come into the fold, which is what the chairman wants. But I do wonder how that is going to play out, and how that is going to add to the story, because still the story seems to be somewhat revolving around Sodongju, because now, like I mentioned, he has a birth secret that we don't know, that I feel like will change everything, right? So it's interesting to me, and we'll see how that plays out, right? Now, moving on to the chemistry between the leads, I feel like it's very good, right? I mean, these two characters, Sodongju, Yeonnam, are dating and live together, right, before she gets married. So they're very comfortable, they love each other very, very much, and everybody can see that. I always like the moments in this drama where like they're pretending to be like strangers, but everybody in the room knows that they have a thing, right? And it's just interesting, because like it's just like an open secret at this point, right? And the only one that's really gonna be a problem is the husband, because like we see, Yeonnam is about to change her mind and ask for a divorce. I think she's asked for a divorce already, because she can sense that Sodongju is getting more and more in danger, and she wants to be like with him and everything, right? So I just find it interesting that like it's very obvious to everybody in the house. Everybody knows about this relationship, right? And you can't even fault him or fault them, because they were in love. Everybody knows they were in love, right? And kind of they've pulled them apart. So it's almost like they're star-crossed lovers at this point, right? And no one really is too shocked, right, by their moments anymore. Like, she's very nice to him. She's very like, when he loses his memory and she sees him again, she gives him her phone and stuff like that. And honestly, even her husband it's just like whatever, right, at this point, right? He doesn't even care anymore, right? I will say something about her husband. He's interesting in that when you first meet him, he seems like a dick. He seems like the worst person. As time goes on, he has milder reactions to things, that he's not like strictly a terrible person, right? He really likes his like wife, even though yeah, there's some trophy to it, but I think he also just really likes Yona, right? And I do feel it is bad for him when they break up, unless he like becomes a terrible person or a monster after that. But generally, he's mild mannered to an extent, right? Except certain moments, but generally, he's fine, right? And so yeah, it's interesting watching his reactions to things, and yeah, even though he's not Sodongju's friend, and he has been shady and was one that called and told Young Jackson's men where he was, he's still not as bad as I thought he would be. Yeah, so that's also very interesting about this, right? So yeah, that's what I will say about their chemistry. It's very good. The two actors are just like able to pull that and get you to believe that there's something between them, and I like that. um One thing I would say that is a general issue for me with this drama up to this point is, I would say, the writing, right? The writing and the lack of subtlety is an issue. In the first episode, when Sodongju is able to successfully trick the assemblyman into appearing on camera collecting bribe, the drama feels the need to show us how that happened. So to an extent, I would say that this drama tries to tell you that Sodongju is smart as opposed to showing you, right? And so it will do that usually through exposition. It will do that, flashbacks to show you how Sodongju does something, and that was something I noticed right off the bat that I did not like, right? I can easily, or people I feel like in this kind of dramas that watch this kinds of like thriller suspense dramas can easily pick up on things. You don't have to show every little thing, right? Because it kind of not cheapens, but it makes kind of the writing shallow. And so that's something they do that I don't like. It's not subtle enough. I know Sodongju is smart, right? You can just show that as is, in every way he like acts. You don't have to like make a mention of it, right? You can show that in how people react to him. A good example is how Chadoki, right, the chairman's daughter, reacts to Sodongju. Same with the son-in-law of the chairman, right? How that couple reacts to Sodongju. You can tell they see him as a threat. So like things like that help more than you telling me, right, that oh yeah, with this flashback you see that like, oh, he had like a cat bell and that's how we put the camera, blah blah blah. I don't need to see that, right? So that's one issue I would say I have with this. The other thing I will say is that I think that the villains are a little flat. And when I say the villains, I'm really just talking about Yum Jang-sun. So Yum Jang-sun is supposed to be the overarching villain of this, but he comes off kind of cartoonish for some reason for me. And that's just a waste, given how like much of a behemoth, right, the actor that's playing this is, right? This is an actor that can pull evil. When you talk about evil, this is an actor that will play evil. So they could have made his character more dynamic, right? And I know they tried to do that in the first episode, but as time progresses, it becomes flatter and flatter, right? He becomes easily like led into things, right? It seems that Sodongju is able to like tout him at every turn too easily, right? And that's kind of an issue. Also, he loses his like control very often. Like he loses that composure he has as the villain, as the distant, given that he is a former national intelligence agent kind of thing and worked there. Like you would think he had more control over his emotions, but there are moments where you see him just rupture and it comes off a little like immature, right? So that's another thing that I would say it's overly dramatic on the villain's part that it makes it cartoonish, but that is really it. I think that otherwise, like the color of this is it's very it's very dark, that I like it. I like how they use color. I like the general tone of this, right? And yeah, it's very, very good. Like Park Hyung-sik does a very good portrayal of Sodongju that I have no criticism whatsoever. And honestly, I love dramas like this, right? I love male-centric dramas that are not necessarily like investigative, like crime, that's just like, okay, this is someone that comes from nothing and is trying to move up. I love stories like that, right? So I will look for more dramas like this after I'm done watching this, because I think I need this kinds of drama more, right? So yeah, that's really all I have in this episode. This has been a great drama so far, and I look forward to see how it will end. I hope, but I'm not confident that it will to wrap this up nicely, but we'll see, right? That's part of the fun, kind of. And I am so curious about who Sodongju is, right? And whether we'll see Yum Jang-sun grovel. Because that's my dream, that's how that plays out, but we'll see. But yeah, that's really all I have in this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a lovely one. Bye.